Morning everyone, myself Gurpreet with my teammates Jerome and Mineral. Today we're gonna conduct a destination audit on. So first of all, we're gonna cover Brisbane's values and objectives. So these are the values that Brisbane has: getting things done, like by adapting to meet changing needs and priorities, by providing value of money, by providing passion for Brisbane, like by delivering values to Brisbane, its residents and customers, by respecting people and being responsible toward customer services, by working together, and by encouraging to make. Next, we're going to talk about Brisbane Vision. So the council has developed 8 programs to implement. So the first one is being accessible to everyone, including residents, workers, students, visitor, business people, and everyone, so that they can move easily throughout the city. The next one is developing or building strong partnership with other levels of government, business, and education institutions. The next one is by being a healthy city, by being a prosperous city, by being a green city. By the Brisbane will have a range of healthy and native. The next vision is by being a creative city, by being a friendly and a safe city, and by being a well designed subtropical. So now we're gonna discuss the visitor statistic, the number of visitors that visit Brisbane internationally and domestically. Around 9.1 million tourists and other visitors, they arrive in Brisbane between 2018 to 2019. The total includes 1.4 million international visitors and 7.7 million domestic overnight visitors. So between the lapse of 10 years, that is between 2009 to 2019, the number of domestic visitors to Brisbane, they increased by 73%, and the number of international visitors, it increased by 50.3%. The total number to Brisbane increased by 7.4% in 2019. In 2019, Brisbane was the third most popular destination for both international and domestic overnight visitors. As you can see in this graph, the number one position, the first position with the maximum number of visitors was Sydney, and the second one was Melbourne, because both of these cities, they have a culture, they have something cultural, like the Sydney has Opera House and the Melbourne has the snowy mountains and everything. So that's why the number of visitors are. So now we're going to talk about the major markets. The majority, the people from these countries, they're majority present here in the Brisbane. So the international visitors, they spent a record of 5.9 billion last year, which is great news for Queensland tourism industry. So China is the Queensland's largest international market, with Chinese visitors spending more than 1.4 billion in Queensland. And visitors from United States, they also spend around 414.9 million, that is 15.2% increase in 2018. And so China is right now, it's the largest international source market, followed by New Zealand, Japan, United Kingdom, Europe, United States. And the emerging international markets, they have a small share, but they are increasing day by day, which is Taiwan, Korea, Hong Kong, India. So now we're going to talk about the competitors, whether they are domestic or international. We have Sydney. Sydney is the number one. It's the most visited state of the Australia because of its breathtaking beaches, charming harbour, busy nightlife, and the Opera House. And the second one is Melbourne, Victoria. Melbourne is very famous. You can say it's the capital of the country. And it has many cafes, pubs, boutiques. Perth, Western Australia. It's one of the most isolated cities in the world, and has the best beaches Australia has to offer, and it has various art galleries and cute looking and friendly quokka. The next one is Tasmania. And Tasmania, it's very much known for its beers and wine. Now we're going to talk about international competitors. So the international competitors, the number one we have is United Kingdom with 37 million visitors. It ranked 10th most visited country in the world. The tourism sector generating income of around 7.2 billion US dollars. The next is Thailand. It's a global tourist hotspot with Germany with 39 million visitors, Turkey with 40, China with 63 million visitors, United States with 80 million visitors. At last, France with 89 million visitors. And in France, 9.7% of the GDP is contributed by the travel tourism sector, and 30% of the revenue is generated by tourism. Now I would like to call Minher to take this presentation further. Thank you.
Thank you, Gurpreet. I'm here to analyze the core resources and the supporting resources of Brisbane and how it can bring competitive advantage to this nation. First element, physiology and climate. Brisbane is known to be the sunniest city in Australia, and the temperature can be a mix of western and subtropical weather. And also the weather remains constant throughout the year, which can be massive. It can bring a massive comparative advantage to the destination because other destinations don't have the luxury of having the same weather throughout the year. Moving on to the culture and history. The Western civilization arrived in Brisbane in 1823, and by 1845 they started occupying the land, and then by 1880 Brisbane became a well-established commerce center. And now currently the culture remains as multicultural, but Western culture remains. And from the activities, there are a lot of activities that can be done according to the physical ability and the affordability. And city walks, river walks, rock climbing, kayaking are a few of these. And also, other than that, cultural precincts as well as shopping centers are based in the heart of the city as well. So these things bring a comparative advantage to the destination, as most of the destinations can't offer these kind of experiences in the city itself. Also, when it comes to events, most of the events are based on arts and sports, and there are a lot of sporting events as well as cultural events that take place in Brisbane, like rugby events, cricket tournaments, and rugby tournaments, footy tournaments. Also, there are a lot of concerts happening, like Backstreet Boys performing in Brisbane and all of that. And when it comes to entertainment, entertainment is provided to families as well as adults. So there are a lot of things that can be done for entertainment. And when it comes to superstructures, there are multinational hotels in Brisbane like Marriott, W Brisbane, Hilton, as well as there are other superstructures that are being built like Wheel of Brisbane for touristic purposes. When it comes to market ties, the community in Brisbane, if you look at the ancestry, there are people from different other countries who are still keeping in touch with their original countries, and there are a lot of students and skilled migrants who obtain the permanent residency. And then there's a good VFR segment visiting family and friends coming into Brisbane. And moving on to the supporting resources that brings comparative advantage, there are 6 factors: infrastructure, accessibility, facilitating resources, hospitality, enterprise, and political. And moving into infrastructure, there is a solid road network in and out of Brisbane, and to support this, there's a strong public transportation system as well. And also there are free services like the inner bus loop as well as the city hopper ferry that tourists can use to move without paying. And also there are shopping centers as well as airports and port as well in Brisbane. Moving on to the accessibility, our main accessibility point is the Brisbane airport, as well as there is a port as well for cruises to come in. and also it can be accessed via the Pacific. And going on to the facilitating resources, getting the visa to Brisbane depends on if you can prove that you're a genuine traveler and you have funds to fund your stay in Australia. And also it would cost you around $365. And also the customs will do a thorough check to prevent any invasive flora and fauna getting into the country or as well. And also when it comes to hospitality, there are DMOs that have published information beforehand. If anyone wants to plan a trip to Brisbane beforehand, they can do that through going through this information. And also there are Brisbane greeters who are always willing to help people out to see important areas in Brisbane. When it comes to enterprises, the businesses related to tourism, as well as that serve the community, are always on the lookout to improve their service standards by carrying out surveys. Translink and Brisbane Airport are two good examples for this. And moving on to the political will. Uh, the government has already invested 12.8 billion on improving the infrastructure in Brisbane, and also they have provided free services like the inner city bus loop as well as the free ferry service. So I would like to invite Jerome to carry on with the presentation with his areas of explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Minra. When discussing about Brisbane and how effectively Brisbane uses its resources, we have used the Global Competitive Index, which is formed by the World Economic Forum, as a framework to better understand how Brisbane uses its resources. When discussing about the Global Competitive Index, as you can see here, there are 4 sub-indexes and further 14 different pillars. When it comes to the 4 sub-indexes, the 4 can be named as enabling environment, travel and tourism policy and enabling condition, infrastructure, as well as natural and cultural resources. When it comes to the enabling environment, the subcategories can be named as business environment, safety and security, health and hygiene, human resource and labor market, as well as ICT readiness. When it comes to travel and tourism policy and enabling conditions, the subcategories can be named as prioritization of the travel and tourism industry, as well as international openness, price competitiveness, as well as environmental sustainability. When it comes to infrastructure, the air transport infrastructure, the ground and port infrastructure, as well as the tourism service infrastructure can be named as some of the subcategories of the indexes. And finally, when it comes to natural and cultural resources, the natural resources, the cultural resources, as well as business travel can be named as 4 of the pillars of the sub-index. When it comes to comparing Brisbane with its major competitors such as London, Paris, and New York City, as shown in the table below, when it comes to safety and security, health and hygiene, environmental stability, the most effective way Brisbane has used its resources can be seen in the safety and security section. The reason for this being, Australia as well as Brisbane, in terms of national security, is deemed to be a really safe country. And when it comes to the health and hygiene sections, as you can see, it has a pretty high obesity level when it comes to their population, only second to New York City from the USA. Such a high obesity level can impact the tourists' attitude towards the country, which could negatively impact if they are planning to further stay as residents, since a high level of obesity indicates a lower standard of living, as well as the life expectancy of its residents. And finally, when it comes to environmental sustainability, as you can see here, Brisbane as well as Australia, per capita, there's per year there are 15.39 megatons of CO2 emissions has been released into the environment, which is deemed to be a pretty high number when compared with London, Paris, as well as New York City. Thereafter, after analyzing the resources and its effectiveness, when it comes to risks and how you can improve it, even though Brisbane and whole entire Australia has been deemed as a nationally secured country, when it comes to the personal safety of its residents as well as its tourists, the same cannot be said. Therefore, when it comes to recommendation on how to improve the safety and security of Brisbane, as you can see here, you can simply increase the number of police patrols during late hours, as well as educate the tourists regarding common occurrences of scams and other illicit activities that they may be a part of, as well as increasing the minimum fines for such illegal activities could be taken. And finally, after all of these measures have been taken, it should be globally promoted and the public should be notified about this measure so that tourists should feel more safe in this Brisbane area. And thereafter, when it comes to environmental sustainability, as mentioned before, Brisbane and all of Australia has a pretty high number of CO2 emissions released into the atmosphere. Therefore, in order to keep this under control, Brisbane can, as recommendations, include its tourists in certain carbon offset projects, as well as the government could promote utilization of energy efficient household items, as well as many use of recycling and reuse in purchases. With that being said, I would like to conclude our presentation. Thank you all for listening.